Oh, I didn't set up the uh seems like it's working. But actually let me just stop this real quick. I'm gonna try do something really fast. Um all right. So it looks like it's live streaming. Okay, I'm just double checking YouTube real quick. Yep. All right, we're up. So hey, welcome everybody to wasmCloud Community Call for July 8th. Today we're planning on going through roadmap planning. We haven't gone and created GitHub issues for everything we plan to put on the roadmap. First, we want to solicit community feedback, talk about prioritization of the different things that we're going to work on. And to start, I'd like to actually go and show what we did for our past roadmap session. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and walk you through that. So pulling that one up. Can folks see that okay? Yeah? Okay. All right. And it's not showing like other windows and stuff. I've got my Zoom overlay. I'm only on one monitor here. Um, all right. So for Q2, we had one major big feature that we wanted to work on, and that was WASI P3. And guess what? WASI P3 shipped. And in the most recent release of wasmCloud, P3 is enabled by default. Now, it pushed back a few things that were dependent on it. Although those have been actively rolling out over the last couple of weeks. The big ones are in this bucket here, not he goes over here. In this bucket here, where it's the implements feature, there was one more addition to the implements feature called external ID that Alex has already landed inside WASM tools. And so as we update dependencies, we'll get that as well. And we think that's basically completion of that feature. The way that we're using that inside wasmCloud is that essentially you can name the host interface that you want to use, and that will allow you to have essentially multiple different backends for the different basically imports that you have of a host interface. So you can now have like Redis and Nats serve as your key value store, and you can swap between those different backends and configure that from your workload deployment. Another thing that we said we were going to do that we got done is our SQLx example REST component. That one I actually pushed all the way up to Launchpad SQLx. Now, it ended up not getting landed there, but I created this one because it was more than just creating the example. It was actually making it work all the way through the ecosystem. And we got there because we landed Mio, Tokyo, and sockets 2 changes within the Rust ecosystem that actually, if you just take SQLx from Rust, you can build a WASM component out of the box without changes to that dependency, which is pretty powerful. And a lot of people are using it, so I'm happy about that. One that we didn't get to, that I'm gonna Command C here, is building out more things around cron. So I think we might pull that one over. We nailed this one. We've done a huge amount of iteration over the last quarter on this, and a ton of hardening on also our CI pipelines. In terms of integration of things, Jeremy's done a huge job there. We've also done a ton of work in the OTel space. So far, I'm really happy with this, with the exception that we didn't finish K6 benchmarking, but we do have benchmarking infrastructure in place. So we've got a box. It's triggered on every release build. It's been running really smoothly for a really long time. A long time being about a month and a half now. So we've gotten some good data. So we have really good micro benchmarks that I've been using a ton for all the things that I've been landing for like host components and services and the stuff that Aditya has been doing. So that was my direct need. But basically, this is all in place that it would be very straightforward, I think, for us to drop in K6 on top of that. So a lot of that work has actually been completed. Now, last time a lot of people asked about Agentic AI and MCP. I think we should bring this forward into our Q3. We didn't prioritize it this quarter, but I think that's probably one of the top of the line features. I think we've done a good job at building out different types of templates and services and examples. There's more to do here, though, always are. Um, let's see, what else did folks want? They wanted to see some more connection pooling examples. We've got some of those in flight. Um, folks do want to see more Golang. There's been a lot of work on componentized Go, and I actually just saw a new PR come over the line in the component model book, actually for documenting and making a really good walkthrough on how to use componentized Go. So that ecosystem's moving forward really well. We've got a new Postgres API out there as well. So for the most part, we did a really great job of hitting what we had on our roadmap. There was significantly more that we added. So let me jump over to uh, our the actual official roadmap, which is our project board over here. Right after this, once we finish soliciting kind of where we're at, I'm going to update this for the next quarter. But essentially, I called out we're not totally done here. I have this in flight, and I am very hopeful that we'll end this by the end of the week. This one, I'll close out once we thread external ID all the way through. Talked about that already. So most of these will be wrapped up probably by the end of, not this one, but the other two will be wrapped up by the end of the week. We've made progress on wasmCloud secrets. So honestly, I think this one is still accurate that it's ready for work. And I've got this one that actually will be, I actually have an example of that locally. So I should go ahead and push that one up. So we overall we did we did a really good job of closing a ton of stuff. Some of it's going to bleed over. That's okay. That's always expected. If you do everything on your roadmap, did you really set aggressive goals? So I'm happy. I'm happy where we landed. Now I've created another board similar to what we had before. I dropped this in the chat. If somebody else could drop the link one more time in the chat, that would be very much appreciated for anybody that's just joined. But essentially, what we're going to be planning towards is what can we get done by October 1st? And just, remember the rule, aggressive goals, honest status. So it's okay if we don't get everything done. But if it's already not plausible now, imagine what it's going to be like in August, that we probably won't be able to get it done. So let's not say we're going to rewrite the whole world, but, we're only revolutionizing how we do computing today. So still be aggressive with what we throw out. So one I just copied over is a more configurable cron job. I'm going to put this over kind of in this category. So I already jammed with a couple people on a couple ideas. So we've already populated this board with some things, but what I'm going to do is encourage everybody to join me and add in some more stuff, and then we can talk through kind of prioritizing and what we think is the most important as a community. But I'm going to start with probably what I think should be potentially our number one theme, is just build stuff. If you build stuff on top of wasmCloud, whether it's a whole product or it is an example or a thing that you built inside your enterprise, we want to know about it. We want to highlight it. We want to do user stories. We want to do blog posts. We want to show people actually building cool and useful things on top of wasmCloud. I think our past quarter was obviously our number one thing was getting WASI P3 out. We did it. So like, what can we do with it now? Is absolutely our number one theme. And last week we got some pretty cool demos from Bharat and others. Building with P3, I think that's what I'm talking about is I want us to build stuff. This will be another cool kind of stuff that we could build, but there's a lot in this category. And I've got a few others that you kind of sort of fold under this. Part of that is that I'd like to propose that we what was suggested in the last roadmap session is bringing in a little bit more of the agentic type compute, agentic type workflows, maybe spending time as a community coming up with a wasmCloud LLM inference API that we can start building some things around there. Another aspect here is that I think if we get really good WebGPU integration, we can do some really cool stuff in the WebAssembly space. And Mindy's been spending time on this already, so I figure we might as well include it as part of our roadmap, getting async, basically APIs for WebGPU. WebGPU itself is actually an async API. So what I really should say is WASI WebGPU here is what he's building out. A couple other themes, and once I finish introducing the themes, I'm gonna invite everybody to come in and jam in here with me. So thinking about agentic, LLM, provider kind of work, that's one category. Another one is thinking through long-running compute. And so the epic interruption that Aditya's been proposing and working on is one category. For me, the ones that I'm working on are host components and services having their own lifetime in their own store. These two are actively in flight, so I feel like I have to put them in the roadmap because they're obviously on the roadmap. So these three are rolling right now. Something that I kind of have a question for the community on is, do folks have a need for using multiple services in their workloads? Is that a feature that we need to prioritize this quarter? I really would like to hear more about that in that use case. We want to see more GPU metrics. I'm going to go ahead and put that one down there. And one more thing that I wasn't sure where to put it necessarily, but is obviously a very top priority for us now to complete from our last roadmap is benchmarking with K6. So that one's definitely still here and still really important to us. Another category I want to introduce is just, general DevX. Bharat actually asked on the discussion. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to respond. I've been out of office a bit, but essentially, I called out a bunch of other things, but I didn't call out Rust directly. Rust is that how when you have a problem child, that's the only one you ever talk about. So I'm always talking about Python, but I'm never talking about Rust because it's always well behaved. In terms of wasmCloud roadmap, I think. There are definitely some things that we can do to continue making the Rust experience the best possible experience it can be. The main thing that comes to mind for me is that Yashwatz is working on a P3 edition of wstd. And so once that rolls out, I think we should do a pass through our Rust examples and templates and build on top of that. Obviously, once we get a Rust edition with the latest WASI SDK, which is within the month, we will then go and update everything to that latest version. But I didn't have in my mind, like other big blocks, at least for the wasmCloud roadmap of what we needed to do there. But if folks think of things that they want to see, let me know. SQLx and WASI sockets was like the big thing in the last quarter that we did pave away. But I'm sure there's other stuff. I'm sure Colin's going to say something about time zones or crypto. But if
Cryptography.
there,
No, it's fine.
yeah.
People get crypto. Yeah, I learned that many years ago now. Don't say crypto, say cryptography.
Okay,
But
cryptography. You're right. You're right. But so if there are other things, drop them near that. I kind of thought through in my book, like at least in the order of priority that I'm kind of seeing from what people ask of us in Slack and other forums. Generally, it seems like Python is like people's number one, and if it's not Python, it's Go. JavaScript, TypeScript, we have a good SDK. Mo Things work. I know that there are definitely rough edges. There's definitely work happening upstream that we'll just, get as it rolls out, which will be nice to have, and we'll just fold that in as a community. But in terms of like actual roadmap items, I think it's more of a maintenance position for us. I want us to add a C++ SDK. I actually like C++, but sometimes I'm crazy. And also maybe a C SDK as well would be really nice to have. But a lot of that work also needs to happen upstream in wit-bindgen, and in the Bytecode Alliance before it comes to us. So I put that as a little bit of a lower priority for us. Um, Otherwise, I've got a handful of other things that I can talk through. But hey, uh, big categories. I'm just gonna throw out and say this, maybe some long running compute work, is pretty interesting. Obviously, benchmarking is its own category, but I actually think that's now a small t-shirt size, whereas last quarter was a large or extra large t-shirt size. So that's pretty much done. Another one I threw in here that's kind of in the the DevX zone, but some reference architectures or example apps or frameworks ported to WASM. A lot of things maybe in that domain. I'm interested in anybody's favorite pet project or that they really want to see done. And one last thing before I set you loose. I just wanted to highlight too that a lot of the things that we build on wasmCloud, we're always aligned with upstream standards. Um, the release schedule, the release train for WASI essentially looks like 031, coming out August 4th. So I right now am hoping to see maps be brought in. So we can use that wit type inside our wit definitions. And that might be useful to know and build around, especially for some of the proposed interfaces we were talking about on this roadmap. Implements obviously is what we're building around. And so once that stabilizes August 4th, it'll be about just ungating that feature flag in wasmCloud. And another one that is like largely just complete in the upstream ecosystem with different implementations is fixed linked lists. Um, Otherwise, I think the only other one that's like really important to us as a community right now is probably the cooperative threads work. Um, that's actually rolling out pretty well right now in the upstream. I have it in this slide as a perhaps more pessimistic date of December 8th. Um, uh, but I'm not necessarily saying it couldn't make October 6th, but I think, right now it probably looks something like this. And so given that, I wasn't necessarily going to include that in this quarter's planning. But we certainly can build behind flags for all of these things. It just won't be released by then.
I think
Okay, so
callbacks is on
yeah.
there too, right? At some point.
Oh, it's a lot of people's favorite. Yeah, the reason why I didn't put it on this slide is like I haven't seen the code for, I haven't seen
Okay.
anybody code it yet. Whereas like cooperative threads, we actually have in a WASI SDK right now.
Yeah.
But that's just how long it's going to take to get two different languages building with cooperative threads and it fully threaded between WASM time, a second reference implementation, and like WASM tools and the 20 or so crates that float about our ecosystem. It just takes time for those types of things. I think callbacks, maybe this December. I
Well, I
think,
just maybe
yeah.
we added another. I don't know, but I'm just um
Call Callbacks is super important because it's what the browsers are asking for, and we want them to build on the component model really bad. So that definitely bumps up the priority in terms of component model and WASI work. But in terms of our stuff, I think the place where, I just wanted to call out like where we would be putting work on is definitely here, where we would be dependent on that feature. I think we can give a really nice experience, but we would put it behind a feature flag basically here because of that. Any questions, folks? I know I didn't cover this in much detail. I can do that, but first I wanted to get more feedback from other people before I keep talking. Hey, Brat. Yeah.
Yes. So, as you said in the building stuff, like I'm building the some demo here, like I demoed in last call, uh,
Yeah.
and I trying to build the kind of full stack app in the WASI 3 stack. So, considering the priority of the SDKs like Go, the Rust is a good option to take the uh, full stack app path. What your thoughts?
Yes. Yeah. What I'm seeing as I talk to people is that with LLMs, languages are really, really starting to matter a whole lot less. And it's more, or rather, people don't care about their language, they care about the outcomes that they get from their language. So now people are more interested in what's fastest, what's the most efficient thing that I can build and target for, what's the safest. And across the board, obviously right now that's Rust. That's leading the way in just about every dimension there. There are a lot of people that do have a ton of incumbent software, like, whether it's all written in Go or all written in even Java. There's definitely still a lot of folks that are like, listen, I really need it in my language, But I would also say that the current tide seems to be that a lot more people are very, very, very interested in Rust. So while I neglected it because it's not one of my problem children languages, Rust is definitely, I think, our tier one, if we're trying to decide what example to build and we don't have an example of it in Rust, we should build Rust first.
Yeah, sure thing. And apart from that, when I try to integrate the UI part with the W standard async library, which is currently support WASI 2, I guess. So,
Yes.
so,
One second. Let me show you something.
Yep.
So basically, Yash sent this to me yesterday. This is what he's been working on. Is he's got this is the first PR of 2, and he's going to add P3 in the next week, basically. And once we have that, then we'll go and update everything to the latest wstd for P3.
That's great news, actually. I was also tried that thing, and
did you mean to get muted there?
oh, sorry. So I have one question with the we have one example in the example section template where we have HTTP API with a distributed architecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that we use the uh, W standard macro for HTTP server. So using that macro make that component by default service component.
No, the macro doesn't turn it into a service. The macro basically changes its exported handler to use the HTTP handler export, and right now it's a P2 only. Now, one of the cool things about wstd is that the way that it's written, when we get an update to P3, it will actually be transparent in that, in theory, this existing code won't have to change except for an update to the cargo toml. And so it'll go from the P2 HTTP handler to the P3 HTTP handler. But it's not wstd that makes you a service. It's actually in the wash config for that example. Let's go to that real quick. This one here. This one, right? Or is it the distributed one? I think this one's probably the best. So that's its top level.
No.
Actually, I think you're talking about a template, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This one, yes.
Yeah.
So inside here, this one is one of the components in the workload. So it's itself not a wasmCloud service, but it is what gives it the HTTP handler on it. And then these two components actually are just components that serve over the wasmCloud messaging API. So if we go into task lead, I think we'll see. Doesn't have a ton of code here, but basically this is its main export for when it receives a message. So what this one mainly is just trying to show is that you can have 2 components with the same export, and you can have one component that acts as the router between the 2.
Okay. Yeah. Got you.
So
currently I was working with the UI, but I don't have any working demo right now. So yeah, so I'm keep building on that. The idea is to build the full stack application completely with the last demo, and adding the also the agentic capabilities like summarization, the transcription generated by the one component and using the other LLM to summarize that output. So yeah,
Cool.
that's in progress. I'll update you guys once it's done.
Thank you. Yeah. So we'll just consider that as part of our wasmCloud roadmap. So in terms of things that go in the build stuff category, I think this is one that we'll want to flush out wasmCloud contrib with, for example. And Victor and I were actually talking before this call that there's probably a lot more things that we want to populate this with, including like Rustix or Actix or insert your favorite framework of choice working as a component workload. These all definitely very much go together. So thank you for working on that.
Yeah, sure.
And just really quick calling out, Bharat, Aditya dropped a link to our service TCP template inside wasmCloud, which does have an example pretty close to what you're talking about, where there's an HTTP front end going back to a service.
Yes, thank you. I'll check that. Yeah.
And this is what makes it know that it's a service basically here.
Yeah, understood.
All right. So we're 30 minutes in and I've done too much talking. So let me pass the mic to you, Aditya.
Hey guys, I was wondering about the multiple services thing that you discussed, and I think there is a good deal of use case for that. For instance, what if you want your service to start with WASI CLI run automatically, but also have an export instead of being either or, just having both as the initializers? That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that because that is what I did here. It's in here. I call them reactors because, that's what they are. But it's a little silly because all components are reactors. But I am going to try to break this down a little bit because that's too many lines. And I have another PR that I'm going to put up soon that's built on top of this that includes the host component work. But yeah, #soon. But that I still kind of actually see this one as a little bit different than what I was talking about here. So like you can solve this as a component that you compose together, right? So like right now, with my PR, this use case works, right? But you get one service that can do it. And then the workaround that we tell people what you can do is, let's say I've got my GitHub API handler, something like that, right? He does GitHub things. And this one does HTTP API gateway things, let's say. And you've got two of these things and you kind of wanted them to be long running and to be stateful and to service the whole workload, and a lot of the things in the workload depend on this, and these two are kind of long lived. Well, the answer that we would tell people today is to just all right, I'm going to do a really sad plus sign, don't judge. To do a composition of these, and then you would get one component, and then you would still have just the one service in your workload. And what's nice about that is that, then we have one entry point into the whole workload, and we can just like from our wasmCloud know that that's there. And the combination of this, right, would be an export on HTTP and an export on let's just some GitHub API, right, something like that. The whole thing would also have an export of WASI CLI run, let's say, right? So that it can have a long running loop. So you can do this with my PR. So I can't say today, but with my PR, you could do this. But my question is if people would rather, or if they have real use cases where they would want instead, right, this. And if we need to support that now in this quarter, or if we can keep pushing that one off. We could not do it with P2, but it is actually something that we could do now with P3 and all the work that we've been putting in there.
Yeah, I'm a bit intrigued by how you would actually implement this, because which export are you targeting, and are you just gonna? I mean,
it's hard, yeah, because if they both have this, what do you do?
well,
And
concurrent.
I don't know. I think the answer is you don't get that. You you have to be like this,
Yeah.
basically. And then at that point that changes kind of how it has to work, and maybe that's not what we want. So here's an example
Yeah.
of a feature that I could add and probably shouldn't maybe add unless folks really have a good motivation for it. This is my answer today, I guess.
So with your reactors,
Mhm.
you basically need to compose it always, and when you compose stuff, you basically wrap that with a single export.
Well, you technically wouldn't have to do composition if, like, let's say all you had was just this, right?
Yeah, but I
Should I
mean,
gave
if you had,
the
say, 2 services.
yeah.
Yeah.
Today you would have to compose it, and part of that composition would also be like, where does this get wired to on the components that got composed.
Yeah. Well, this is quite interesting, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the reactor stuff.
Cool.
And I mean, yeah, it's cool if you don't have the whole separate services both at the same time.
Well, I'm going to leave that there in case other people have things that they need for that. I guess one last little bit that I did throw on here that folks might be interested in is if we should start building towards exploded components inside our OCI ref. So one powerful thing that you can do with WebAssembly components is that they're basically a tree, and we know how to refer to each of these. If you're referring to them from, let's say, the registry, and we know exactly what like their version is of that component, of this individual component. And let's say we have 100 different components that are running on our host. There's some pretty nice things that we can do, like if we have a component per OCI layer. OCI will just dedupe this for us. And so we wouldn't have to every single time download something like CPython. So this scenario is an example of like a Python component where they have their own code, like their Python code. Maybe they've pulled in a shared library. Maybe they've got a native dependency that's also a WebAssembly component. And each of these are loaded in separate OCI layers. And so that feature inside the component model we call exploded components. Today, what this actually looks like is just one box, just one .wasm. We download the whole thing, and that's in one layer. But something that we could, spend time on is building this out. So I threw that on here as something else that might be worth exploring in this quarter. There are a couple of reasons why I think it would be interesting. Largely because it's in prep for, I think, these two languages, and maybe others like JavaScript as well. Where basically if support for the language looks like compiling the interpreter or compiling the runtime into WebAssembly, then let's find ways to kind of dedupe that both from the aspect of distributing it via OCI and downloading it, but also from the aspect of what we load on the host. So that's something else I threw out on there, although I'm not sure, unless folks really want to see it, right, and prioritize it, it might not make this roadmap, it might be the next one after this. So that's another one I threw on. Okay, all right. I want to give everybody, let's say, 5 minutes. If you don't already have a link to this, I'm going to drop it in the chat one more time. And drop in here and let me know some of your other ideas for what you'd like to see on the wasmCloud roadmap. Probably the most important thing would be if you do this, my company will run with wasmCloud. That's going to raise up in our priority queue pretty high. But if there are other things like, I've always wanted to do this and there's this rough edge that's been keeping me from doing it and getting my thing done, we want to know those too. And then we'll go through and talk through some of the boxes that get added, and anything else that we want to discuss. So I'm gonna be quiet for 5 minutes, and I would like folks to jump in and add things to this roadmap. If you don't see the thing that you were expecting to see here for what we would get done this quarter. Now's your chance to put cryptography down, Colin, if you want it.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, it's actually I don't really need it. I work with the Rust crypto's been working fine for a year. So I don't want to put something on there that's not something I'm going to use.
Nice, yeah. I also want to throw out that I got Rust TLS compiling in with the SQLx demo, which is that made me happy.
I mean, I really think we need a strategy for requests that might involve somebody becoming very good friends with the maintainer or something. Just, I don't know. I guess, or maybe just continue doing wstd or something. But we are just at a point where it's just fundamentally different from the philosophy of WASI and the component model. And I don't know.
I do know that maintainer accepts donations for their roadmap. So it is possible for an enterprise to pay that maintainer to care. But otherwise, I don't think friendship's enough.
Yeah.
In this land of the open source. But yeah, I'm definitely I'm pushing for the wstd stuff for us right now in the immediate term.
Yeah, it works. It's just it's such a pain to have a separate like WASI setup and all your code. Although it's not like it's unheard of. I mean, right now I'm doing tons of C++ with it big, and I'm scripting, macro or whatever. So not macro, whatever. I forget the term. The big, like, hey, now we're compiling from scripting. Shows you how good of a C++ person I am. I like basically can't remember basic words. But I'm just a terrible C++ person. Anyway, but yeah, so it's not like it's unheard of in WebAssembly to have big giant chunks of code where you target WebAssembly, but it would be nice not to have to.
Yeah, I think the C++ SDK stuff, like we need to get wit-bindgen CPP to do the async bindings upstreamed. And then probably I'll go and update the sample C++ for P3. And then at that point, I think we can add our own C++ SDK and life will get better.
Do you have a link to it, Bailey? I can help. Not that I
Sure.
finished the map stuff because I'm trying to finish the C# runtime loop, but
Hey,
I may be able to help.
I slotted it. I put it on a slide, which basically means your stuff's done. I don't know if you know that.
The what? My what?
I gave I gave this presentation like 2 weeks ago, Yordis, and this is about how the process for WASI to adopt component model features. And I was like, yeah, I think Maps is ready. So that's going to be in the first WASI release, obviously, right, Yordis?
Hell yeah. But I'm confused about something because I'm still learning. Like there is something about C# runtime that I need to finish. What the fuck does that mean? Like I don't know what that means. Is that like was time but in C#? Like I'm getting lost. I'm just like letting the eye teaching me like, okay, go ahead and finish this and all right, good.
I think you should ping Scott and say, hey Scott, this is one of the last things that doesn't have map support. Can you land it? That's what I recommend there because every time I try to do it, I get lost too. And so what they're talking about is there's a .NET runtime, and it's got two different backends. And I think the one that you want to use is the AOT backend, but that's like not the default. And so getting set up to use it, the way that you got to do that is a little tricky, but let me just show you that. I notice C# is one of my problem children that I did not include on the wasmCloud roadmap for this quarter. But you know, if the people want it, we could talk about it. This, yeah, componentize.net. Are you familiar with this, Yordis?
No, I sure got I'm three or four repositories deep of link like finding.
Yeah.
I'm in the
Okay.
componentized LD, I think it is the linker thing, and
Oh.
now like no, you don't need to do anything there. Like now there is another repo in the .NET that they use branches inside the same repo, and then between different branches, there's technically the code base. And like, dude, I'm so lost. Like, okay, I need Pepe brain right now. Like one step at a time. What do I do? So
Yeah, well, .NET's a special place. But I think the all the repos and all the things, there's an XML file in here somewhere that combines them all together and gets the branches correct. So this is the only way I've found to actually get me an environment that will build all the way out with C# and .NET. But I'm also going to say that you actually, I don't think getting that done is a requirement for us to, and as part of like, and you know, I can't say this definitively because the WASI subgroup has to vote on it, but I would say that it's very unlikely having it in every single language under the sun is a requirement to be able to launch it. You've already gotten it in multiple different languages, which for me, I think is very, very sufficient.
I just want the wit-bindgen repo to be full.
Yeah,
Like
I
that's
love
my
that.
goal. Like the official one is like whatever is there, I need to finish it. And yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do.
I
But
mean,
going back to the stream and stuff, like if you have an issue, whatever, like send me in a Slack and maybe I can just take ownership and trying to add the types to the bindgen and stuff.
sweet. That would be awesome. Yeah, I think for the C++ stuff, like what we're kind of blocked on a design decision, which is very much just like what's the common denominator version of C++ we can depend on. If we can actually depend on coroutines, we can have nice things. But in C++, sometimes people just don't like nice things, and we've got to do things in the old way. So
Yeah. Okay.
that's where we're blocked at right now.
Well, never mind
So
then. Yeah.
I don't think you want to join that fray.
No, the
But
last
yeah,
time I
no,
had
I
to wait for
really
them and
appreciate it
say,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I had to tell
Them
them in C++,
them
it's like, just tell me what you want. Like, I just get it to work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I see we got a few things added. So let's talk through those. This one I didn't talk through earlier. Jeremy, do you mind talking about your idea that you threw on here?
Sure. So yeah, on this section right here for language adoption, really because now that we have P3, I feel like we're going to start seeing a lot more languages getting more mature with WebAssembly compiling. Obviously, especially like Go proper and Python. Similar to how we had Are we fast there yet? It's like Are we polyglot yet? And just really keeping track of which languages compile, and we have tested every single time we have a CI/CD build to make sure everything is working as expected. That way, when people are using that language, they have a nice feeling of, oh, okay, wasmCloud 2.6 point whatever came out, and I feel good that my application is still going to work. The other two are really around streaming. Since we're focusing on providing streaming capabilities inside WebAssembly, really just creating demos around that, examples, and even like places for people to start with if they want to make a streaming type of application. And then finally, the watch new build that just goes back to the polyglot side, so I can do like a watch new and have like a Python style template that's ready to go. Same with the watch build command.
Cool. Thank you. Any questions for Jeremy on some of those ideas? More from Jeremy. This
Thoughts?
talk about this.
Yes. Try to think of how that one came around. So, anyways, so we're gonna have host components, supported very, very, very soon. I know Billy is extremely busy, but host components, just like host plugins, but allows for you to extend a wasmCloud host without having to recompile the whole entire thing. And since this is going to be providing a lot of additional functionality that can be customized, I really feel like we need to show off how does this work with like wasmCloud secrets, or go into Edge with WASI SPI, which there is a WASI SPI spec that recently got reviewed by the W3C committee, that handles that. And then, also this might be a good time to even maybe we move in the Couchbase plugin. Instead of being a host plugin, we can have a host component for that. Maybe it's more of turns into the model of start off with a host component first, and if it gets matured enough or it's used by a lot of people, maybe that's when we move it to a host plugin. Something like that.
And I'm gonna ask that we put these things in wasmCloud contrib. So like one of my favorite parts of having host components is that those dependencies are no longer in tree. I don't know if you noticed in the wasmCloud repo, but we now have, as part of our last quarter, we did a ton of stuff on having audit, cargo audit enabled, and we're like revving our dependencies for everything, and that's great for security. What's not great about it is the churn that introduces, having a lot of different dependencies. So being able to put these as host components and make them an isolated thing that is just them, and out of tree of the wasmCloud cargo toml, means that we have to churn way less over there, and these components can be revved and maintained independent of the host, which I'm excited about. And so yeah, every time we add my favorite library or my favorite framework, now we don't have to put that in our mono repo and manage it there. Okay, and then we've got a bunch of ideas on cool reference architectures that we want to create. That's kind of still in the vein of a lot of things that we had in our last quarter. I see a new one here. Was this you, Bharat, adding?
That was me.
Oh, hey, okay,
Yeah.
tell me about it.
All right, so about a month ago, a few weeks ago, we did auto scaling with Keta and showing off HTTP requests coming in and auto scaling on workloads. That's great from an HTTP story. From a NATS perspective, right now wasmCloud messaging NATS does a subscribe. So when I scale up the backend workload component, I'm actually fanning out that same message. So when I have like one message coming in and I scaled up to 10, now I got 10 workloads doing the same subscribe, which that's actually that's fine. I mean, that's maybe what you want. But NATS does have queue group, which I think it's literally just round robin. Like NATS will basically say, oh, okay, like these 10 workloads are subscribed to this group. I'm just gonna just start throwing them at each individual one, but make sure only one gets it. And so then that way that'll allow for us to put auto scaling from a NATS perspective in place. And I think this will help a lot with transactional type of deployments. Second one, sorry.
My main question on that is, Aditya, at one point you had spiked on creating a NATS native wit definition.
Yeah,
I know.
that did
I mean,
happen.
it wasn't on our roadmap, so it wasn't top priority.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, that did go under my radar. Is that something you want to target for this roadmap to
Well,
possibly?
we have options. I guess the reason why I'm throwing it back out is queue groups is a very NATS specific interface, I would think. And might be hard to massage into something that's generic, like wasmCloud messaging. I know that there's a couple different types of delivery mechanisms for like Kafka, for example, but I don't think I have the same thing in Pulsar. And I guess what I'm saying there is
In
this
Kafka, you have the consumer group, which is effectively the same.
Do you know about Pulsar?
I think Pulsar and Rabbit and Q. I think Pulsar is like Rabbit and Q is the Q one, the one who defined the consumer group. So like, no, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah,
I would
right.
definitely just write. I would write down Pulsar right there. Well, I guess I can do it. Sorry, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great call out because maybe, Bailey, to your point, maybe it's finding more of a genericized thing and calling it queuing or something like that, and just making sure it
Yeah.
can be genericized enough for the back end side.
Yeah. Pulsar
Yeah.
call is a creation name is the same concept. It's just a consumer group, like one of them pick up competing consumer effectively. So yeah, most of them have it. Although Bailey, I think I said 2 years ago, I told you so. For these abstractions, the better you can do is actually to flip it around and like personally speaking, everything is specific until you observe what is actually common, and then you figure out what's the abstraction. Otherwise, just draw a line in the sand and say messaging does not means everything. It just means this particular semantics. Everything else is something else.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we landed on with wasmCloud messaging, which is just basically pub sub, which is why right now it doesn't include any kind of queuing concept, which is kind of why I'm like wondering if it is a NAT if we should
It's
push
not.
on doing wasmCloud NATs.
It's
Yeah.
not, but you need to think about what's the common denominator. Most of the time, what you're gonna find around all of them is like it's just an identifier of consumer group or like nuts, whatever they call it, or Kafka or Pulse or call it a creation name, right? So in the worst case, you're most likely gonna run into okay, yeah, it's just an identifier to say this group of workers supposed to like uh, act only once in the message. So
Like,
yeah.
like Bailey, are you saying like maybe this is more of a WASM Cloud contrib host component type model? Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what I'm wondering. Well, I guess what I'm wondering is if we should make a couple of these that are specific to them, or at least do that exploration. Um, I mean, I'm totally game to find the common denominator. Although I guess I deeply wonder if a lot of these just have such rich features that are specific to them, if we're not better served just being explicit about that.
Yeah. Like commitment
Not at this
control.
level, but other stuff, yes. There are a lot of queues and timeouts, pool timers, all the stuff is like they all have their own configuration. So in the worst case, a byte array of I don't know what the heck is inside here and put your own type there.
What would you want to see, Yordis? Would you just want to see a wasmCloud NATs, kind of like what Aditya had spiked out?
So here's my philosophy in overall. These type of decisions are not something that you fiddle with every single day, right? It's like most of the time the architect or the team decides we're going to use X and Y, right? And then you learn all the capabilities and then you learn how to configure it. You set it up and then you forget, right? It's not something that every day you have to reconfigure, change it, and stuff like that. And most of the time, changing them means, hey, you need to understand the guarantees of the semantic APIs and so on. So it's not as simple as, oh, just flip it around, right? Because of that, from your perspective, if you get one of these generic APIs wrong, every single other APIs pay the cost of it, right? So for
Yeah.
me, from the perspective of wasmCloud, I'd rather see wasmCloud, NATS messaging, wasmCloud, call Kafka, whatever. And those you may find eventually some common types that you could share, but I don't care as much. That's what I would do because otherwise you're gonna just punish every single messaging package, and you're gonna end up with APIs that are like the complexity of getting a given configuration correct means actually production outage, losing data, breaking, right? Because oh, I forgot that when it's in Kafka and the flip around is 213, like now it does something like that is actually where you're gonna like you may have even a liability like from the company speaking right perspective. So I would not do
Yeah.
that. I would just do a specialized. Yes, have a second layer that you may want to share a bunch of ZK stuff like that, but in reality having one generic one is always backfire. Like it's
That
just
matches
proven.
my intuition. And I mean that's why this was a little scary to me, that idea. I was thinking maybe we go for the thing that's a little bit more straightforward, and then grow from there. I know that Pulsar and Kafka are both really important to the ecosystem as well, but I think easier to add now with host components that we can kind of crank these out. Are there more that got added here that I haven't called out yet? Yeah, Bharat.
I have a question with the reference architecture. Is this related to the architecture for building applications on wasmCloud?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple of requests in a couple different areas. So one that I'll just call out is like, how to do all is one that we're asked fairly frequently. So having
Yeah.
something for that would be nice to have. I think there are a lot of others, like how to run MCP servers, is kind of one. Another one would be give me like your actual enterprise application architecture. Like, this is the pet store, right? I think a lot of
Yeah.
people would love to see that.
Yes. So with this, I have a question like when we talk about full stack application, we have to be the application architecture is like to be all the components in one workload, or we can have multiple workload for app. What is the right way?
Yeah, I would say that we need to give them the answer to both, and how to decide it would be the most important part here. So the reason why I think things should be in the same workload is because they need to scale together, they need to deploy together, and they probably share the same resources. So that's when I would want them in the same workload. When I would want them in different workloads is when I would have also chosen to do a separate container or a separate microservice. For a lot of the reasons in that they have different lifetimes, they have different scalability requirements, maybe they have different RBAC that you want to apply to them. And I think when you're thinking about building an entire enterprise platform architecture on top of wasmCloud, what it might end up looking like is hundreds of essentially serverless apps running, right? And
Yes.
you're gonna have some that are owned by the team that, sometimes we call them the platform engineering team, sometimes we call them the middleware services team at enterprises, but often there are folks that own the how do I do authorization, how do I do authentication, how do I do logging, how do I do auditing. And for those common concerns, I wonder, a lot of that should probably be host components. A lot of that should probably also be services, and when to choose between the two.
Okay.
We need to have some reference documentation for. My rule of thumb is when I want something to be a service, it's because I wanted it to be workload tenanted. And I want something to be a host component when it needs to basically obviously apply to everything on that host. And then giving people the right size for how to do some of this, I think there were some really cool things that happened in the containerization era over the past decade or so. And some projects that I saw that did a really great job of this include like KubeCost's early demos. I remember being really impressive. Of course, they did a lot with like Spring Boot, Java microservices with PetStore as being one of my primary things that I'm kind of thinking about there. But yeah, I think there's a lot to add here. Actually, who had the most ideas on this was Eric Gregory. I don't know if you're still on this call. I know we're starting to run way over now. Eric, is there some other things that I should include here?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Sorry, my computer's moving kind of slowly. Hopefully you can hear me. But yeah, I think that polyglot enterprise application use case is important to cover. That's one of the first ones I would imagine trying to represent here. And then how to run the MCP servers, that's a big one. And yeah, I think this is just a piece that's been missing in the docs for a bit. So really trying to focus on fleshing that out this quarter is a good documentation goal.
Thanks. Also, one more question with the like I tried the local deployment of my demo with very minimal code with the WASI 3 async handler, but somehow it's breaking. I posted the question in the wasmCloud chat Slack channel. So yeah, I'd like to have your thoughts
I'll jump
on
on that. Yeah, I saw that question come through. I've been doing a little bit of travel, a little bit offline, but
No problem.
I'll take a look at that and we'll get back to you on that. That looked like potentially a legitimate bug.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Any other items on here that we want to talk through? I'm not going to do dot rank voting just yet for this one. I think for this, I think we generally understand that a lot of this is just basically following up under build stuff. So many of these things are enablement activities, like getting us reference documentation, get us examples, templates, like let's flesh out wasmCloud contrib. Let's build on top of these SDKs and show people all the different things that actually just work in WebAssembly today. And when I say people, I also mean agents. They're figuring out a lot of the things that we're able to build nowadays. And so I think we have a really great roadmap for that. And then we're going to wrap up sort of our long-running compute work that we have that's coming through from last quarter. And then I think we've got a handful of interfaces that we're going to explore, which we'll be able to now that we have host components. So it's not like we're tightly tied to that API. It'll be really easy for us to rev that independent of the host. So we can do a lot of different types of experimentation and exploration now. Without worrying about breaking a ton of people. So that's going to be really nice. So thank you, everybody. I think probably not today, but by the end of this week, my goal is to capture most of this in ticket form and then get this added to the project board.
I will volunteer to help.
Thank you. We could do that with beer.
I have an important question by the end of the thing.
Yeah, do you want me to stop the live stream or?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate your feedback, and as always, keep asking questions in Slack and find